Behold, the beauty that is Indonesia, Mother Nature's gift of serene and colorful landscapes, where diversity makes us one, united towards a common goal, where resiliency is achieved together. A strong infrastructure governance arising, where investments are waiting to flourish, and where creativity is inspired by tradition. Indonesia, where beautiful possibilities are offered.
Indonesia, a land of breathtaking nature and rich culture. There are many things Indonesians are proud of. One-of-a-kind photogenic spots spread all over the nation, unique wildlife, magnificent cultural heritage, and the most recent one, the G20 presidency. Indonesia is proud to hold the 2022 G20 presidency. As a multilateral force connecting the world's major economies, the G20 holds a strategic role in securing global economic growth and stability. Together, the G20 members represent more than 80% of world GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of the world population. And 2022 is the year that Indonesia plays a major role in leading the G20 discussions on various global issues. Not an easy task amid a global pandemic that still continues after more than 2 years. Holding the presidency in this unique moment where countries are struggling to bounce back from COVID-19, Indonesia introduces Recover Together, Recover Stronger as the main theme of its presidency. As a step toward an even, sustainable recovery, 6 priority agendas are introduced in the finance track. Exit strategy to support recovery, addressing scarring effect to secure future growth, payment systems in the digital era, sustainable finance, digital financial inclusion, and international taxation. Through these agendas, the Indonesian presidency aims to engage all G20 members and invitees in discussions and deliberations that goes beyond just the interest of advanced economies. Considerations also need to be put for other countries that may still be struggling to manage the pandemic. Because coming out of the pandemic, no one should be left behind. Recover together, recover stronger. At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging. The different timings of exit policies can potentially bring negative spillover effect for countries. To mitigate these risks, a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated exit strategy is needed. Under Indonesia's presidency, The G20 countries and invitees will work together to create policy settings for a smooth exit strategy. Discussions will be held in the working group level as well as high-level meetings. For it is our duty to ensure that emerging from this pandemic, no one gets left behind. Recover together, recover stronger.
Hari ini ada rencana kemana? Kamu masih aktif kerja di luar ya? Masa pandemi gini memang banyak sektor yang terkena dampaknya. Cuma beberapa sektor strategis aja yang boleh beroperasi, tentu dengan berbagai syarat yang harus dipenuhi. Ada sih yang beruntung masih bisa kerja dari rumah, tapi banyak juga yang tetap harus keluar untuk cari uang, kayak kamu. Kalau gitu harus didukung dengan stamina yang kuat dan protokol kesehatan yang ketat. Kamu udah bawa masker cadangan kan? Hand sanitizer juga jangan lupa. Jaga kebersihan dan rajin cuci tangan ya. Aku gak akan bosan ngingetin kamu soal ini. Jauhi kerumunan dan hindari kontak fisik dengan orang lain. Kalau ada keperluan transaksi sehari-hari, mending pakai cara pembayaran non-tunai aja. Kan udah banyak tempat yang nyediain cara pembayaran pakai kris. Tinggal scan kode krisnya pakai aplikasi pembayaran di handphone. Lebih aman kan bayar tanpa bersentuhan? Aku sadar, meski sama-sama menghadapi pandemi, kita punya perjuangan yang berbeda-beda. Tapi dalam menghadapi virus ini, kita harus saling jaga. Jaga diri biar nggak ketularan, dan jaga jarak biar nggak menularkan sekitar. Yuk pakai masker 2 lapis. Semangat kerjanya!
The G20 is a very important forum for all of us. We know that this is affecting majority of the global economy, trade, as well as investment.
With the humble and hospitality of Indonesia, welcome. We achieved some promising progress through multilateral, through G20.
Behold, the beauty that is Indonesia. Mother Nature's gift of serene and colorful landscapes. Where diversity makes us one, united towards a common goal. Where resiliency is achieved together. A strong infrastructure governance arising, where investments are waiting to flourish, and where creativity is inspired by tradition. Indonesia, where beautiful possibilities are offered.
Indonesia, a land of breathtaking nature and rich culture. There are many things Indonesians are proud of. One-of-a-kind photogenic spots spread all over the nation, unique wildlife, magnificent cultural heritage, and the most recent one, the G20 presidency. Indonesia is proud to hold the 2022 G20 presidency. As a multilateral forum connecting the world's major economies, the G20 holds a strategic role in securing global economic growth and stability. Together, the G20 members represent more than 80% of world GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of the world population. And 2022 is the year that Indonesia plays a major role in leading the G20 discussions on various global issues. Not an easy task amid a global pandemic that still continues after more than 2 years. Holding the presidency in this unique moment where countries are struggling to bounce back from COVID-19, Indonesia introduces Recover Together, Recover Stronger as the main theme of its presidency. As a step toward an even, sustainable recovery, 6 priority agendas are introduced in the finance track. Exit strategy to support recovery, addressing scarring effect to secure future growth, payment systems in the digital era, sustainable finance, digital financial inclusion, and international taxation. Through these agendas, the Indonesian presidency aims to engage all G20 members and invitees in discussions and deliberations that goes beyond just the interest of advanced economies. Considerations also need to be put for other countries that may still be struggling to manage the pandemic. Because coming out of the pandemic, no one should be left behind. Recover together, recover stronger. At the end of 2021, we've paved the road to 2022's G20 presidency, promoting Recover Together, Recover Stronger as its main theme. The first Finance and Central Bank Deputies meeting in the Indonesian presidency has established 6 priority agendas in the finance track that will be discussed throughout 2022. Now, it's time to get the wheels turning. One of the most crucial agenda in the Indonesian presidency is exit strategy to support recovery. COVID-19 has led to a severe global recession. In response, countries have taken unprecedented fiscal and monetary policies to protect the economy. These policies, along with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, has brought positive outcomes. Economic activities had begun to resume. Nevertheless, recovery doesn't come as a one-size-fits-all item. Advanced economies are recovering much faster than their emerging markets counterpart, while low-income countries are lagging. The different timings of exit policies can potentially bring negative spillover effect for countries. To mitigate these risks, a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated exit strategy is needed. Under Indonesia's presidency, the G20 countries and invitees will work together to create policy settings for a smooth exit strategy. Discussions will be held in the working group level as well as high-level meetings. For it is our duty to ensure that emerging from this pandemic, no one gets left behind. Recover together, recover stronger.
Hari ini ada rencana kemana? Kamu masih aktif kerja di luar ya? Masa pandemi gini memang banyak sektor yang terkena dampaknya. Cuma beberapa sektor strategis aja yang boleh beroperasi, tentu dengan berbagai syarat yang harus dipenuhi. Ada sih yang beruntung masih bisa kerja dari rumah, tapi banyak juga yang tetap harus keluar untuk cari uang, kayak kamu. Kalau gitu harus didukung dengan stamina yang kuat dan protokol kesehatan yang ketat. Kamu udah bawa masker cadangan kan? Hand sanitizer juga jangan lupa. Jaga kebersihan dan rajin cuci tangan ya. Aku gak akan bosen ngingetin kamu soal ini. Jauhi kerumunan dan hindari kontak fisik dengan orang lain. Kalau ada keperluan transaksi sehari-hari, mending pakai cara pembayaran non-tunai aja. Kan udah banyak tempat yang nyediain cara pembayaran pakai.
Whether in our 20s or 60s, we're all babies compared to our planet. The Earth, with its mountains, plains, rivers, and oceans, has been spinning for long before we exist, and hopefully, long after. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that the Earth will be preserved for the next generation, not at the pace we're currently in. Recent climate-related natural disasters have strengthened the argument that climate change is a critical global concern. Climate change also greatly affects the world's economic and financial stability. The increasing frequency and severity of natural disasters have shown to disrupt economic development and generate large fiscal costs to finance social and physical recovery. If the current battle against COVID-19 has taught us something, it is that in order to come out of crisis, we need to work together. And the climate crisis is no exception. The G20 recognizes the importance of addressing climate issues and has played a significant role in orchestrating various initiatives, which includes creating a roadmap to address climate-related financial risks, to share best practices on the development of environment and climate risk management in the financial sector, to work on climate-related reporting standards, as well as to build a framework for a sustainable economy. However, when it comes to climate change, our work is far from over. Indonesia urges G20 members, invited countries, and international organizations to continue research and efforts to enable countries to transition into low-carbon economy with minimum risk. Because just like how we need to survive COVID-19, the world needs to survive us. Recover together, recover stronger.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon, the Honorable Mrs. Destri Damayanti as the Senior Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, Mrs. Yati Kurniati as Executive Director of Macroprudential Policy Department Bank Indonesia, Mr. Ahmad Solihin Lutfianto as the Chairman Representative Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative, as well as Director of Compliance Bank Rakyat Indonesia, Mr. Alexander Rusli as the Chairman of Executive Board WWF Indonesia, Mr. Karyanto Wibowo as the Director of Sustainable Development Danone Indonesia, Mr. Surya Chandra as the Vice Minister of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, Mrs. Velia Salim as the Economist, Mr. Stefano Savi as the Director, Global Platform for Sustainable Natural Rubber, Mr. Iman Shah as the Deputy Commissioner of Indonesia Financial Services Authority, central bank, and financial authorities from various countries, associations, representatives. All the participants who are joining us today through Zoom platform and YouTube channel of Bank Indonesia. Welcome to the G20 Finance Trackside event, Indonesia Presidency in 2022. Specifically, in the casual talk on building a resilient, sustainable finance hosted by Bank Indonesia in collaborations with the Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative and WWF Indonesia. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Clara Antawijaya, and I will be the moderator of today's event. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we would like to also urge all the participants in the room in the Jakarta Convention Center to always put your mask on to make sure that everyone is safe and healthy. Ladies and gentlemen, to start this session, I would like to invite Mrs. Destri Damayanti as the Senior Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia to provide her keynote speech. Mrs. Destri Damayanti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Clara. Okay. Distinguished speakers, Mrs. Yati Kurniati, Head of Macroprudential Policy Department Bank Indonesia, Mr. Ahmad Solihin Lutfianto, Chairman Representative Indonesia Sustainable Financial Initiative, Mr. Alexander Rusli, Chairman of Executive Board WWF Indonesia, Mr. Karyanto Wibowo, Sustainable Development Director of Danone, honorable guests and colleagues from Bank Indonesia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. And very good afternoon for all of us. Welcome to all of you in the casual talks on building resilient sustainable finance as part of series of seminar of G20 side events. I would like to say thank you to all panelists and participants who are joining offline session in Jakarta Convention Center, as well as the ones virtually present in this side event. And I'm delighted to deliver opening remarks in this event about sustainable finance because I know this issue is considered as one of the priority agenda in G20 presidency of Indonesia. And also, this issue is not only relevant for current generation, but also even more important for the generations to come. So after we hear about the development of sustainable financial instrument, as well as the readiness of the financial market from morning session, now we will discuss further about industry anticipation to implement and adopt, as well as to manage climate-related risks and opportunities in order to create a resilient, sustainable finance. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, issue on the global warming due to the greenhouse emission raise a significant attention as it leads to a climate change toward warmer temperatures and rising sea levels. Threats such as an extreme weather, clean water crisis, forest fires, and other environmental disturbances are increasing at alarming pace and even further potentially disrupt monetary and financial system stability. And based on some expert calculation, cost of handling disruption from climate change is estimated to be higher than the cost of handling the global crisis 2008 and even COVID pandemic. This can be illustrated from the cost of handling extreme weather problems that already reached 5.1 trillion US dollar in the last 20 years. And further, some analysts even predict that without any action taken to limit climate change, it is estimated that Earth temperature will increase around 3.2 degrees Celsius and the global GDP losses around 18%. However, if the Paris Agreement target is achieved by a maximum incremental Earth temperature below 2 degrees Celsius, global GDP losses will only be limited to 4%. This is according to studies by Swiss Re Institute in 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 pandemic in the last 2 years convinced the need to expedite green transformation globally. This was represented in COP26 in November 2021, where the world leader agreed that climate change should be taken seriously and countries must reduce their greenhouse gas emission to net zero by 2050. And in order to control climate change and mitigate further catastrophic risks, enormous effort has been taken and massive reallocation of capital is needed, which represent unprecedented risks and opportunities. The International Energy Agency estimates that a low carbon transition could require around 3.5 trillion US dollar in energy sector investment every year for decades. And this is twice from the current rate. The sustainable finance is very critical to an inclusive, green, and sustainable global economic recovery. And under the G20 presidency of 2022, the implementation of the G20 Sustainable Finance Roadmap will focus on the 3 key topics which are considered critical. The first one is developing a framework for transition finance and improving the credibility of financial institution commitment. And number 2, scaling up sustainable finance instrument with a focus on accessibility and affordability. And 3, discussing policy levers that incentivize financing and investment that support the transition. And suitable policies framework should be well designed, well executed, and well targeted so that it would be able to bring people, public-private, to collaborate to address climate crisis in the future. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia is very blessed. We are very lucky because in terms of the geographical form, Indonesia has a massive potential renewable energy, which have become large opportunities for Indonesian economy to transform to sustainable economy and finance. And it is identified that around 4,400 rivers in Indonesia potentially may provide up to 24,000 megawatt. And wind power with potential up to 100 gigawatt, and also geothermal with potential up to 23.76 gigawatt of energy. And shifting trend from fossil fuel energy to renewable energy will open opportunities for Indonesia to increase economic productivity. If Indonesia optimizes those potential, the GDP growth is projected to have more additional around 0.6 to 1.1% per annum. That's according calculation by Bappenas and IFC in 2019. And also according to COP President, Mr. Alok Sharma, this can bring Indonesia to be a superpower country in terms of green investment. I want to point out something very interesting happening in this forum, in the GCC site actually. So we look at the combination of the recent technology and digital innovation, and this could help Indonesia manage new opportunities in green economy. What we can see, and maybe you, for those are you who are in the GCC right now, you might see the reverse vending machine near to the corner outside this room. And the reverse vending machine, initiated by Indonesian startup, provide automatic collection of plastic waste service to be recycled further. So this machine can accept the deposit of plastic waste and will exchange with a certain point that later can be redeemed to your electronic money account or even your bank account. So this is just an example where green economy combines with digital innovation will speed up new opportunities for Indonesia to grow in a planet-friendly manner. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as a financing strategy, Indonesia and other countries have developed sustainable financing products. Green bond and green sukuk are part of the instrument that can deliver several benefits for both issuers and also investors. The green bond has seen exponentially growth. It reached around 40 billion of issuance in 2020 and projected up to 260 billion US dollar between 2021 to 2023 in accumulation. And the government has undertaken significant reforms to make green financing and investment in Indonesia more attractive. Indonesia has already enacted residential regulation regarding carbon emission, which is related with carbon trading. And this regulation is set to support the achievement of the target of greenhouse emission reduction as stated in the nationally determined contribution document for controlling climate change. And Indonesia has also launched a national green taxonomy, which is developed by a collaboration of various ministries and institutions, academics, international institutions, and also NGOs. And the regulation asserts our commitment to climate change issues. It is to reduce the carbon emission in 2030 and net zero emission in 2060. And as mentioned earlier, the consistency of policy execution would bring additional GDP growth approximately between 0.6 to 1.1% per year. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, how about the role of Bank Indonesia? Of course, Bank Indonesia will always and will continue to support the transition to a green economy and finance. And Bank Indonesia has been actively undertaking green initiatives in the last 10 years. And these initiatives are in collaboration with various domestic parties, including Ministry of Environment and Forestry, OJK, and Ministry of Finance. And Bank Indonesia also actively collaborates with international forums such as Network for Greening Financial System. Bank Indonesia also declared the BI Green Financial and Institutional Framework, which consists of two pillars. The first one is green aspect in policy mix, and the second, green institutional driven. And those two pillars aim at a stable, inclusive, sustainable, and resilient financial system and economic growth as indicated by orderly transition, as well as an excellent achievement in internal green initiative. And in policy initiative, Bank Indonesia has issued green loan to value policy for environmentally friendly properties and vehicles. And meanwhile, on the internal side, Bank Indonesia is also trying to carry out green initiative by allocating sustainable investment as part of Bank Indonesia Foreign Exchange Reserve Management. And for your information, by December 2021, Bank Indonesia Foreign Exchange Reserve hold as much as 5.82 billion US dollars sustainable related portfolio. And this is some part of it is invested in the green portfolio as much as 1.83 billion. And of course, going forward, Bank Indonesia will continue to strengthen green financial policy, which aim to mitigate risk to financial system stability. An effort of this will be taken through improvement of macroprudential policies, financial market deepening policies, as well as financial inclusion initiative. And in order to have these policies effectively implemented, Bank Indonesia will continue to synergize and coordinate closely with KSSK, ministries, agencies, and other relevant stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude my remarks, and in order to achieve resilient, sustainable finance, we need strong international coordination with active roles from every nation in order to limit acceleration of global warming. This needs to combine with scaling up innovation and initiatives that might be customized regarding to every country's capacity. In this fashion, Indonesia is always ready to support global recovery as the G20 spirit, recover together, recover stronger. So, with that, let me end here and allow me to express my appreciation for the distinguished speakers, invited guests, and in particular, the Committee of G20 Presidency Indonesia. So, that make even this event can be held well. And I hope you will have a fruitful and interesting discussion in this casual talk event. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mrs. Destri Damayanti. Ladies and gentlemen, the global temperature has risen over the past decade, and as we know, which was recorded to be 1.09 degrees Celsius higher than in 19th century. And of course, referring to the Global Risk Report in 2021, extreme climate change have always been the risk with most catastrophic impact for the past 3 years. And on the other hand, the Sustainable Finance Working Group has developed a roadmap, which one of the focus area is to develop market to align with the investment with the sustainability goal. And therefore, to support this initiative, the G20 side event will be conducted to have a better understanding about climate-related risk and the financial sector area. And to have a deeper view about that, as we are now having the honorable speakers that we will conduct casual talk on building a resilient, sustainable finance. We are now having honorable speakers, which all of them are actively involved in this bringing sustainability inclusions on the regulatory side, financial industry, and also real economy sector. Please welcome to the stage Mrs. Yati Kurniati as Executive Director, Macroprudential Policy Department, Bank Indonesia, and Mr. Alexander Rusli as the Chairman of Executive Board, WWF Indonesia, as well as our speakers that are connected online, Mr. Ahmad Solihin as ISFI Chairman Representative, Compliant Director of Bank Rakyat Indonesia, and Mr. Karyanto Wibawa, Director of Sustainable Development, Danone Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the discussions, allow me to kindly ask all the speakers in here to take a group photo session. All right, it has been said. At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Once again, please. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You may now return to your seat. And thank you, Mrs. Destri Damayanti. You may continue to your next agenda. And now, without further ado, let's just begin the discussions. And right now, we're heading into the first panelist, Mrs. Yati Kurniati, as the Executive Director of Macroprudential in Bank Indonesia. Good afternoon, Mrs. Yati. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you for your time with us. Actually, we are talking about the sustainability and its climate-related risk and also the financial sector within it. And as we know that extreme climate change is a real deal right now, and it's a crucial matter for all the country right now. It's a hot topic right now. So does climate change important for the central bank, and how will it affect the economy, including the business and the financial sector?
Okay. Let me start by pointing out what we have shown in the video at the beginning of the session. First of all, let me talk first, Honorable Senior Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, Ibu Destri Damayanti, distinguished fellow resource person, thank you for joining our session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all participants. So I would like to start by pointing out what we have shown in the video, that physical risk as global climate change serves as an important reminders of the urgency for all global societies on the need to act together to mitigate the cause of climate change. So first, let me start by, first we should understand first we have a better understand on what is the climate related risk and how the implication of those risks to the financial and economic stability, and also this will lead us to emphasize the importance of managing such climate risk. So if I may quote the Carney, it is stated that financial toll is enormous. So in the beginning, Bu Destri Damayanti also mentioned about the cost, and global insured loss reached 140 trillion US dollar, and uninsured loss covered 200 trillion US dollar. It's so enormous. So natural disasters that emanated from the global climate change have caused storm, severe drought, also severe floods that resulting in huge catastrophic. And such damage due to the infrastructure damage and crop failure, disruption in distribution, as well as connectivity and accessibility, it will cause the cost of volatility in prices, and that leads also to the hindering the economic stability. And the international goals of decreasing carbon emission by 45% in 2030 and to bring those to net zero by 2060, which has been ratified by Indonesia, are imperative in stemming the pace of climate change and its damage. So we know that the fastest way to meet this standard is to transform countries' energy and industrial sectors. To cut sector emission quickly, countries, for instance, can reduce the overall electricity use, increase efficiency and substituting electricity generation with renewable resources. Aside from physical risks, climate change also poses economics to transition risks that emerge in our process toward the low carbon economy. And climate change impact and shift in energy sources affect how financial sector assess risk and return. The shifting process itself triggers transition risks as stranded asset could perceive because of changing in investor preferences. Physical risk and transition risk may cause disturbances to monetary and financial stability. Among other things, the monetary impact could in the form of price volatility, inflation, an increase in risk premium on interest rate for non-green sector, and external disturbances that may affect capital outflows and exchange rates to the limited export and external financing sources because of the non-fulfillment of grain requirement. Whereas the impact on those risks to financial system stability could be in the form of increase in credit risk, the non-performing loans due to stranded asset and limited financing for certain sectors. So as the mandate of the central bank are to maintain monetary and financial system stability, we need to ensure that financial system is resilient to this climate-related financial risk and supportive to the transition to net zero economy. Now let me put more attention to the issue of changing behavior of financial sector and business perception along the transition process toward the low carbon economy. Currently, business and investors have started to realign their views on ESG-minded companies. Analysis of accumulated data also shows that ESG practices are translating into robust stock performance over the long term. A study by DeRosso found that firms that reallocated earnings by investing in research and hiring improved their revenue growth by 47%, and their profit also grew by 36%. So compared to those companies with a strict short-term focus on earning per share. Moving forward, financial system has also taken into account environmental risks to value asset. So in 2019, corporations began to reporting their climate risk in accordance with the recommendation of the G20 Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. The data in the reports allow banks and asset managers to address environmental risks as they do other hazards. They can assess their portfolio for exposure to carbon-intensive industry, flood-prone properties, and sovereign losses from weather events. Insurers also have improved the management of vulnerabilities by modifying coverage and pricing. Financial markets see the value in sustainable investment. Strategies that overweight high environment, social governance stock have now beaten their benchmark for some time. Green finance, we realize, is work in progress. A lot of things to be done. Expert project that an increased availability of insurance coverage would lessen the burden on taxpayer, raise investment and GDP, and help make the environmental more robust against the forces of climate change. Government, however, must lead the effort with climate policy that the financial system can fortify and facilitate. Countries need to move further and more quickly to implement their Paris Agreement pledge. Lastly, finance will complement and potentially amplify, but never substitute for climate policy action. Officials across the whole nation must require and help standard disclosure reporting. Major global banks, insurance company, investment manager, rating agency, even accounting firms, all have roles to play to support the acknowledgement of environmentally related hazard. Financial authorities also need to set and supervise rules for financial best practices in risk management and support sustainable finance and investment, while corporations must adapt their business operation to transition themselves to carbon neutral. All in all, policymakers and all the economic agents should work hand in hand in adapting to withstand and support a resilient and sustainable model for the benefit of our future. Leveraging on the G20, with that, we could recover stronger. Recover together, recover stronger. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the explanations. All right, so we can conclude that actually the climate-related risk has led into the financial cost actually, and the financial cost will be huge because it can create such a crop failure and also the other like the hampering the accessibility. So actually it costs huge. Okay, thank you very much for the explanations. Now we are moving on to the second panelist, and as we are now connected online to the Mr. Ahmad Solihin Lutfianto as a chairman representative, the Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative Compliance Director, Bank Rakyat Indonesia. Mr. Solihin, how are you, sir?
Oh, very well, very good. Thank you.
Very well. So it's interesting to know that Indonesia has a multi-stakeholder platform and sustainable finance promoting the sustainable finance best practice. And one thing to be addressed is that, could you elaborate us more what is ICBI actually? And like who are the members and the founder and its mission itself? What was the motivations in establishing such a platform?
Okay, Mbak Clara, thank you very much for having me. So before I answer the question, I would like to greet Ibu Destri Damayanti, Senior Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, Ibu Yati Kurniati from BA Central Bank, Pak Alexander Rusli from WWF, and also Pak Karyanto Wibowo from Danone. Ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to share the journey of the establishment of ISFI or ICBI, which actually started from the project of first movers on sustainable banking in 2015. And this project led by the OJK, Indonesian Financial Service Authority, and technically supported by WWF Indonesia. Thank you for the support from WWF Indonesia. So in this project, 8 banks with the largest asset in Indonesia committed to stand as the pioneer of sustainable banking and implement the sustainable finance practices that are aligned with the SDGs initiative. So the first movers on sustainable banking project ended actually in 2017. However, to maintain the continuity of the commitment, the 8 banks agreed to form an initiative called Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative. So IDB or ISFI was founded in 2018 with 9 founding members, which are BRI, Bank Mandiri, BCA, BNI, Bank Muamalat, BRI Syariah, Bank BJB, Bank Artagra International, and also WWF Indonesia. ISFI hold a vision to strengthen the finance sector role in supporting the achievement of the SDGs and tackling climate change. So the scope of work of ISFI include enhancing the ESG risk management, and the second one is providing sustainable business opportunity, and the third one is encouraging innovation in sustainable financing, policy and regulation, solution, and collaboration. ISFI actually has been developed to be an open multi-stakeholder platform, promoting best sustainable finance practices at national level. So in 2019, 4 more banks, which are CIMB, Niaga, OCBC, NISP, Maybank Indonesia, and also HSBC Indonesia, joined to this initiative. And then follow up by Penin Bank and also SME or Sarana Multi Infrastructure in 2020. To date, ISFI now has 15 members in total, with 13 bank members that represents, I think, around 62.5% of total asset of Indonesia banking sector. 1 non-bank member, which is SME, and 1 NGO, which is WWF. So as part of our commitment to sustainable finance implementation in Indonesia, all ISFI members have incorporated ESG risk management into their business activities. Nowadays, 13 financial institutions have explicitly acknowledged the societal and economic risks associated with climate change. 11 financial institutions have established sectoral financing policy in the palm oil sector by requiring their borrower to obtain RSPO and or ISPO. Among of them are BCA, BGB, BNI, BRI, CIMB, Mandiri, Maybank, and so on. 7 financial institutions already have ESG task force. And this one is also interesting. 6 financial institutions have established dedicated ESG team, which are BRI, BCA, CIMB Niaga, Mandiri, OCBC, and also Bank Syariah Indonesia. I would like to share also that 6 financial institutions have committed to no longer finance projects that have negative impact on protected areas, including UNESCO World Heritage Site. And also 5 financial institutions already has senior management responsibility, has included management of climate change risks and opportunities. So last but not least, I would like to share that 4 financial institutions have a strategy to mitigate climate risk across its portfolio. And to date, 4 financial institutions have issued sustainable financial instruments with a total amount reaching $1 billion. BRI for 500 million, Mandiri 300 million US dollar, OCBC and ISP 200 million US dollar, and SME 5 million IDR. Thank you, Mbak Clara.
You are very much welcome, sir. Thank you very much for the explanation. So it's very amazing and it's very impressive on how ICBI has gone so far. I mean, from 2015, we can see that right now it has issued sustainable finance instruments, total amount of more than $1 billion US. Congratulations, that's very impressive. And then right now, before we are moving on to the third panelist, we would like to have better understanding, because right now we have Margaret Kuhlo as the Global Finance Practice Leader, WWF International, to share her keynote on the climate-related risk and how it connects into the financial sector.
My name is Margaret Kulo and I lead WWF's Global Finance Practice. It's an honor to be with you. The world is facing an interrelated set of complex crises that we need a collaborative, systemic approach to address. Our Earth is warming at an alarming rate, with physical impacts that can be seen from the melting Arctic to blazing forests, from our dying coral reefs to our flooding and drying cities. We are losing biodiversity at an alarming rate, with more than 2/3 reduction in average species size over the last 50 years, and roughly 1 million species at risk of extinction. This level of biodiversity loss undermines the capacity of nature to help us limit rising temperatures, and it makes us less resilient to the physical impacts of climate change. And the more the climate warms, the greater the impact on nature and the services it provides. The health of our economies and our societies, and even our individual health, is dependent on a healthy natural world. If we continue business as usual, we could lose $10 trillion in global GDP by 2050, while a nature-positive approach could generate up to $10 trillion in annual business value and create 395 million jobs by 2030. From an economic transition perspective, we need to consider climate and nature together, because if we don't, we're likely underestimating the pace of change we need in sectors like energy and transportation, because we can't necessarily count on the mitigation potential of natural carbon storage and capture. From a financial systems risk perspective, if we consider climate risks in isolation, that leads to an underestimation of the climate risk, because embedded in those models is an assumption about nature's ability to perform those mitigation and adaptation functions. Based on evolving work by the central bank and financial supervisors network for greening the financial system, biodiversity loss itself also represents a macroeconomic and financial systems risk. We are at a turning point. The confluence of science and citizen understanding and interest in changing the way we do business, corporate interest in business for good, investor interest in being part of the solution, financial regulators' interest in identifying nature-related risk, and policymakers' interest in setting an investment climate that's more conducive to a net zero, nature-positive future. And the role of the finance sector is key. You understand complex systems and how to use your financing, investment, and insurance products and tools to support and even drive policy goals in a manner that can be mutually reinforcing. COVID-19 has highlighted the critical importance of protecting nature for human health and for our economies. It has also helped us understand we need to ensure that the way we recover from this crisis builds on the economic, social, and environmental resilience that will support us through the next crisis. I want to thank you for your kind invitation to address you and wish you productive, constructive discussions.
Thank you, Mrs. Kulo. And right now we are moving on to the third panelist. Right now we're having Mr. Alexander Rusli as the Chairman of Executive Board of WWF Indonesia.
Hi, thank you.
All right, sir, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, well, thank you. Assalamualaikum semua.
Alhamdulillah. All right. All right, so as we know that WWF is one of the most active institutions, and providing capacity building and also technical assistance in the ESG related industry. And well, can you explain the urgency of the financial sector in managing the climate related risk and also the opportunity?
Thank you so much, Clara. So I guess like everything, in any problem that you see in this world, at the end of the day, the best way is if you want to solve something, follow the money. Yeah, so you have to follow the money, whether through policy, whether through the money that's being spent, invested, you can make real changes. And I think that's why we're here today. I think if you move on to the next slide that I have, although I don't want to repeat whatever is there, the COP26 that happened in Glasgow end of last year are all very clear. Yeah, you want to action something, follow the money. There is net zero. Again, the financial institutions are urged, right? But you know, out of all the commitments that are made, you can still feel, yeah, that there is a sense of, in terms of determining the timelines, yeah, it's still playing safe, still assuming that certain technologies will come to play. Yeah? As we know, the changes that's happening to our environment, whether it's the rise of temperature, the water level, the seawater level going up, the melting ice. Those who are in Indonesia know about this minyak goreng, cooking oil shortage that happened. Fundamentally, you know, people saying it's about people hoarding minyak goreng, but in reality, for over the past few years, the production of everything that's growing has been lowered, yeah, because of the climate, right? And then the supply, you know, the supply is going down, demand is going up. Then you see a situation like we're faced with at the moment, right? So it is impacting us by far. Yeah? So moving on to the next slide. So again, I don't want to repeat this because we know this. I just want to highlight. You know, remember last year at the start of COVID, when everyone panicked and all activities stopped, you know, factories stopped and all that. We saw, you know, real impact of blue skies, you know, better water for a while until reality hits. People want to survive economically, then things start to find its way again into production, right? So, but you can see the impact, the direct impact of what happens with our activities, economic activities, in terms of determining how our environment actually works. Moving on to the next slide. So you know, this is the thing with the global commitments and actions that needs to be taken by each countries, right? The world is so interconnected today, right? So whatever happens in one part of the world, you know, energy sources it's spread, right? You know, what happens in one country happens to another. Where does the coal from Indonesia go? It goes to when we block the coal export, we heard how many countries scream yell for help, right? The same thing with this minyak goreng, the cooking oil situation, right? But so in solving this problem, everyone has to almost work in orchestration, and this is where I guess where the challenges and why a forum like G20 becomes important, why the regulator becomes super important. We are seeing costs going up, right? I mean, I think all of us know that the reality will hit us, yeah, in the sense that all these so-called bad activities for the nature is going to cost us dearly at some point. But no one really knows when that crossing point between the cost going up, at the same time the new greener activities are still very expensive. And as I had a discussion with Bufelia before started, the question is, how do you finance this transition period, right? How do you finance this transition period? How long? How big, right? And who does that? What framework is required? I think that's the most important question that we have to answer through this, because not one country, not one institution can actually solve the problem. Just a bit about WWF Indonesia and WWF on the last page. Just moving on. So we are, as you can see, we have been very active in this space, right? And then we're proud to say that we're in a unique position. We're in more than 100 countries. We deal with global production systems, global brands. We work with governments in each countries, you know, at different levels of successes. But we're able to compare notes very quickly. And in a situation where global action like this needs to be, and you know, in these countries, we're in the landscape, right? We were actually active there, doing preservation of different parts of the nature. So we do use us, do utilize us as much as possible. We're very proud to be here today. Thank you very much.
All right, sir, that's a really good point of view there, because, you know, all the things is just like interconnected within the interactions between the climate change and also the nature and also the people itself. Because without sustainability, well, from the economic perspective, without the sustainability, the cost will go up. Right now, we can see it in the real eyes. All right, sir, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
For the explanations. And right now, we are moving on to the fourth panelist that is connected with us through online. Right now, we can say hi to Mr. Karyanto Wibowo as the Director of Sustainable Development, Danone Indonesia. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thank you, Clara.
You're welcome. So, you know, FMCG is a truly game changer because once they shift, and the value chain will follow. And we have heard that consumer goods are among the progressive sector in committing in the zero net emissions. So therefore, I would like to address the questions. Could you elaborate on the climate action that had Danone taken so far, especially for the Danone's carbon neutrality by 2050? What are actually the targets, and how can it increase your resilience to your company? Hello, sir. Could you please unmute the audio, please?
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Very well.
So I have the slides. Thanks to project my slides, but first of all, thank you so much, Bank of Indonesia, Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative, and also WWF Indonesia for the opportunity to share Danone carbon neutrality commitment in this G20 Finance Track side event of the Indonesia G20 Presidency Conference. First, quickly, let me introduce our company, Danone in Indonesia. We are a leader in 3 businesses. The first one is Early Life Nutrition. Our product is like a Sarusada HCM product. And then the second one is medical nutrition through Nutrisia and Waters. I believe most of you aware on Aqua product. We are building an unique health-focused portfolio, actually, operating in 25 plants and 15,000 of employees. And then our vision is actually one planet, one health, because we really believe that the health of the people and also the health of the planet are really interconnected. So we discussed before about the context, right? And then we can also connect to our commitment on COP26, which is really push countries to do more, countries and as well as the business to do more to curb the climate warming of carbon emissions. Of course, this pressure will increasingly be imposed on the investment and also the industry to bring emissions associated to the business. The Glasgow Pact also delivered the breakthrough on rules in governing the carbon market and took aim at fossil fuel subsidy. As we aware that actually globally we emit about around 50 billion tons of greenhouse each year, and then this emission came from many sectors, and of course we need to have many solutions to decarbonize the economy. So it is clear from the breakdown that the contribution for the the business is key on this one. So basically, of course, business we need to play. You need to play our part, and then for Danone actually, we really want to lead the business or to lead the industry to transition to the low carbon economy. This is why we pledged in 2015 to be carbon neutral by 2050 across of our value chains. And then actually our strategy, maybe we go to the previous slide first. Yeah. So yeah, previous slides. Yeah, so actually our zero net commitment means that we are responsible for the carbon emission from the farm where we source our ingredient until the product is being consumed. And the strategy is really reducing on emissions, transforming the agricultural practices, eliminating deforestation, and also the offsetting the one that remains. So we are also part of the RE100, which is collective action toward 100% renewable energy by 2030. And at the same time, also we adopt the circular business model because it is proven bringing the impact for the climate. Ibu Destri was mentioning before that about the reserve vending machines in the bottle. This is actually example of the implementation of CE in Indonesia. So we are also working on the carbon neutral in the future by the offsetting on the remaining carbon that we need to do through many initiatives. And then we as a Danone, we are one of very few companies actually achieve the A listed for the 3 environmental area in the CDP, which is climate change, forest, and also water the scarcity. So we go to the next slide. Basically, this is more on just to give you an idea on what we are doing on the ground in Indonesia on how we address the climate change and also reach our ambition. So we have the target to be full value chain zero net by 2050. Of course, it is not easy. We need to do it anyway. So we heavily invest on the green capex to reduce the energy in our productions. At the same time, also to assess the renewable energy towards 100% RE 2030, we massively install the solar panel for all of the factories. For time being, still 5, but all of 25 factories will be covered by the solar panel. And then at the same time, also to assess the renewable energy, we built the biomass facility. It is still one in our factory in Jogja, but more and more we will also access or invest for this biomass facility for our boilers. And then the second one is on the next slide. Basically, of course, we also address the water circularity because water is also very relevant to the climate change. We do the initiative collectively and comprehensively to address the water scarcity end to end, start from the recharge area until also the access for the water to the community. We also promoting the regenerative agriculture because we aware that agriculture is also play a very important part about the climate change. So we are trying to establish also the model surrounding our factory on having more how to say the regenerative agriculture model so that the soil will be better and also able to to store the carbon. And then the last one is, this is also quite important for the next slide. So this is also the topic that we always almost discuss every day, which is talking about waste. We in Danone, we have the ambition to be fully circular by 2025, use as much as possible recycled materials and push more on reusable model. Because this is the model where we can significantly reduce the climate. And then to achieve this ambition, of course, we need to invest on the the green initiative like recycling plant. Now there are 2 recycling plants supporting us in Bandung and also in Pasuruan. And at the same time also we do the collective action on our plastic waste. And then recently we also launched the integrated waste management facility in Bali, which can be a model for integrated waste management solution in Indonesia. So this is more or less what we do as an industry, just to give you an idea that basically the topics on climate change is really embedded to our business strategy, and it is really moving. So this is more or less what I can share, and then happy to further discuss on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a huge appreciation for the circular business model that Danone Indonesia has taken. It's really wonderful. We hope that more companies can implement this kind of business model as well. And then we hope that Danone Indonesia can be carbon neutral company with its value chain in 2050. All the best for Danone Indonesia.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have seen from the FMCG's lens regarding building resilient, sustainable finance. And right now, I would like to take it back into Bank Indonesia's perspective, because Bank Indonesia is the central bank, and therefore Mrs. Yati, I would like to address the question. As we know that Indonesia's economy is still relying much on the banking sector. And therefore the question is, what is the central bank's view on the banking role in handling the climate-related financial risk? Has there been any efforts taken by Bank Indonesia as the central bank?
In my previous elaboration, I already talked much about the risk. And we understand that the transition process toward the low carbon economy needs financing. We need to change the technology. We need to adapt the process of production. We also need to have a capacity, technical capacity. So all these need huge, if I'm not, I can say, very enormous amount of investment. So we cannot suddenly jump swiftly to the low carbon. So we need to orderly transition toward the neutral emission. For this purpose, companies as well as all production sector need financing. That's in Indonesia, the dominant role in financing is coming from the banks. That's why in this regard, banking sector plays a very important role to support such transition. If I may, this morning until the afternoon, G20 talking things in related to sustainable financing. So some of the priorities in sustainable financing is that G20 members preparing to develop the framework so that the orderly transition can be have a orderly transition with better access, with the scaling. This is scaling up the accessibility and also the affordability to access the financing. So Bank Indonesia has our mandate is to maintain financial system stability. We also have to provide better environment that the financial sectors, not only banks, but also other financial sectors have supported this transition process smoothly.
All right, so it is as a whole, yes, ma'am. So, Mrs. Yati, do you think that Indonesia has a good progress until now, the financial sector?
Yeah, we are in, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we are green financing is work in progress. So maybe still not much provided because the green products and the green production is still growing, and but the financing from the financial sector will pave the way to. We have a pledge that in 2030 NDC unconditional is 29%, right? So we have to support this pledge. We have to support the government, also hand in hand together to attain that objective.
All right, we really appreciate on how Central Bank always supporting the sustainable finance instruments until nowadays. Thank you very much, Mrs. Yati. And we just seen from the Central Bank's perspective, and now we are moving on to the banking sector perspective. And therefore, I would like to address questions to Mr. Solihin from ISFI or ICBI. Mr. Solihin, what kind of implementations that for ICBI member to manage the climate-related risk? And for example, from your own bank's perspective, Bank Rakyat Indonesia, what are the key drivers in implementing the sustainable finance or climate risk management?
Okay, thank you. Before I answer your question about the challenge, I would like to elaborate about the opportunity as mentioned by Pak Tiko, the chairman of Perbanas, that we see nowadays sustainable financing and asset are seen to be very attractive compared to the conventional one. So based on the latest data, the total of sustainable financing and asset by Indonesian banks reached 800 something trillion rupiah, or around 56 billion US dollar. And on the other hand, global sustainable bond issued by Indonesia issuer amounted to only 32 trillion rupiah, I guess, or around 2.2 billion US dollar. So while domestic green bond issuance was recorded at partly only 500 billion rupiah. So this number, I think, is considered very small compared to the global sustainable bond issuance that reached around 700 billion US dollar in 2022. And I do believe that this number will keep increasing as investors now are shifting to look for more sustainable investing. So this means financial institutions in Indonesia have massive opportunity considering the big size of a sustainable global market. So about the challenge, this interesting one. To be able to capture this big opportunity, more support, we need more support from the government to create a sustainable finance ecosystem in Indonesia. As mentioned by Bu Yati from Central Bank, that the government, I think, needs to provide guideline and the necessary incentive. Many speakers mentioned about the importance of the incentive to boost interest and demand for ESG financing, while regulators need to provide also frameworks and adequate platform for financial market to increase their participation in ESG and sustainable financing. At the other hand, financial institution itself needs to build and improve their capabilities and capacities in developing and offering ESG-related and sustainable instruments, and also services to meet potential demand, the huge demand. We also need to learn and explore global and local standards. And this is not easy, especially for the first mover like us, BRI, because actually we don't have any enough local for benchmarking process and things like that, and also regulation that can be implemented in supporting our sustainable finance implementation. This is, by the way, one of ISFI scope of work to build capacity for all ISFI members, as mentioned by Governor of Central Bank Indonesia, Pak Peri Warjio, and in the morning session, that the key point is synergy and collaboration. Another challenge that we face in implementing sustainable finance are constructing and collecting currently unstructured ESG data and how we report them to our stakeholders. Right now, there are many reporting standards that we need to follow, such as GRI, Global Reporting Initiatives, TCFD, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, SASB, and many more. So for us, we are now in the process of strengthening our ESG strategy and roadmap by referring to ESG rating assessment and also ESG concern from our investor. We expect that we can capture the big opportunity out there through our ESG roadmap. Thank you, Mbak Kara.
All right, sir. Yes, I think we have to agree with your statement. It is not an easy way to do because nothing would come easy. But then you mentioned several things about the challenges. What about the opportunities, sir? Do you see huge opportunities in here in implementing the sustainable finance?
Yes, as I mentioned before, that here in Indonesia and not only in domestic but also in global market, there are still huge opportunity for us, not only for the asset side but also from the from the liability side. Because for us as a bank, we have to invest more in sustainable bond rather than the conventional bond.
All right, so there is still huge market love. Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And now we're moving on to Bapak Alexander Rusli. Sir,
Yes. Yep.
as we know that WWF has tools for financial institutions and regulator to provide the sector understand about the current best practices. So the question is, what are the lessons learned that have you identified so far over the financial sector in responding this risk, and what are the opportunities?
So I guess it's not straightforward. I wouldn't say that we have tools, yeah. But because of the breadth of operations of WWF globally in more than 100 countries and all that, we are in the position to analyze, study, have dialogues with many countries. But in reality, the situation between different countries are very different. Different countries are in different cycles of the development. Some, the energy situation is cleaner, so they're more stable and they're not in growth mode. Some don't deal with plantation, they get their food sources from other means, right? So each place, each country is unique in its own right? So, and the same goes with businesses in different countries, right? In countries where margins are higher, lesser population, right? So I guess all of bankers, business people here would, when it comes to business, it's all the same, right? Cost reduce, revenue increase, right? That's it. And if you want to use the word sustainable, there has to be a sustainable margin for the business to continue, right? It's that simple. And that's, these are some of the learnings that we've done in all these countries. That part is constant and the same. Now, most of businesses in Indonesia, it to rely on the fact that the cost is going to be spread over a large base of population revenue, right? And hence the margin is quite thin here, right? So if we want to find that period of creating this transition incentive or whatever what you want to call it, right? So we have to be able to find that solution where I personally, this is not the position. I don't like subsidies. Yeah, you subsidize the revenue. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on the market. Yeah, price discrepancy. But so you have to find ways to subsidize the costs. And financing is a big part of the cost of an industry. So I guess that's what I'm saying. We have the experience from many places. That's how we are engaging with all the different parties. I wouldn't call it a toolbox because they're not all relevant to the situation in Indonesia because of the state where we are as a country in the development of the country, as well as the nature of the economics when we analyze businesses here. Thank you.
Yeah, somehow we forgot about the classic economic law, whereas the cost decrease and the margin increase. But one thing I would like to ask to you, sir, because you mentioned about the huge populations of Indonesia. Does that mean that huge populations in Indonesia is, a major problem?
You can't see this as a problem, right? It depends on the business, but all of the business that started in Indonesia uses that as a base for the business model, right? So it's just a fact, right? Some countries have small population, their cost base, how they get their profit, their sustainable margin, it is just by increasing the price, right? And it's acceptable there, right? And in countries like Indonesia, you cannot do that because once you increase the price of the margin, someone else will undercut you, and the laws of supply and demand will not allow that basically. So it is what it is. So we have to find a solution for the context we have.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for the explanations. All right, so we are moving on to the fourth panelist, Mr. Karyanto Wibowo, as the Director of Sustainable Development Danone Indonesia. Moving on to the FMCG lens again. Can you provide us with some figures or projections? What are the opportunities for the financial sector from the transitions to a low carbon economy moving forward?
Yeah. Thank you, Clara. So I think it's quite interesting discussion, to be honest. And then from private sector, from the business, I think Danone, I just share with you on what we are doing to address the challenges, and then what are we going to do to be aligned with the ambition on the climate. I think there are many companies also, especially driven by the multinational. We have the same commitment, which is now more and more also the local Indonesian company is going towards these directions. Just to give you an idea, I read a research a few weeks ago. I think it's quite interesting, where about 36% of Indonesia CEO is quite extremely concerned about the climate change. And then in terms of the investment, 16% of Indonesia CEO are planning to significantly increase the investment in the sustainability and ESG context. So I think this is quite interesting numbers, where it is kind of a positive signal how business in Indonesia actually more and more ready to invest on sustainability. And as for the the projections on the investment, I think we discussed already from the other panelists as well, but I just want to give you two examples relevant for Danone, but I think also relevant for many other business. The first is about the renewable energy. So this is now the topic or the sector we're growing very fast, which is the investment on renewable energy may reach 175 trillion, and this sector is attractive for the many investors because of the high demand from the industry and also public. And then, of course, definitely this investment will significantly reduce the CO2. Majority still in the geothermal, but nevertheless, the potential investment on the solar energy is also significant. And then the second one is basically on the circular economy. Circular economy is really significant opportunity in Indonesia, of course, to reduce waste, at the same time also improve the environment. Fully adopting circular opportunities is really key. There are several sectors actually potentially adopt this model, like definitely food and beverage like us, textile industry, construction, wholesale, electrical and electronic can be the area where the circular economy can be implemented. And then more and more a company toward to these directions. I also act as a press chair, which is a kind of alliance for many FMCG and also the brand owner and also the converter who really drive the circular economy business model in Indonesia. And then we are really able to lead and try to develop the model, how it should be implemented in Indonesia. And then of course, to make this model develop, of course, we need to have the sustainable finance from the bank. And then of course, we are talking about the opportunity on the circular economy. I read the news, the research from Bappenas. The potential is huge. Can link or support the Indonesia GDP up to I think 45 billion, and also create a significant job. So of course, this is something that we have to work together, develop together. There are so many potential on the financing climate change initiative in Indonesia, definitely. And then of course, together we can work and then also foster competitiveness and unlock the new market opportunities in this segment in Indonesia.
Thank you for the insightful answer. Thank you very much. And it's relieving to know that 36% of the CEO of Indonesia is really pay attention for the sustainability. Thank you for bringing the fact. And we just had a good discussions and very fruitful. And now we are moving on to the Q&A session. Right now we have the question from Jakarta Post. The question itself from Jakarta Post, can you deliver? All right, before we are moving on to the Q&A session, we would like to bring the discussion first. And therefore, now I would like to invite Mr. Stefano Savi, as Director of Global Platform for Sustainable Natural Rubber, to add some insight for the discussions. So, Mr. Stefano Savi, you have 3 to 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Clara, for that introduction. And selamat sore, ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished speakers and guests. I'll like to take a couple of minutes to introduce you to GPSNR, or the Global Platform for Sustainable Natural Rubber, as an example of an international membership-driven platform that is set up to define sustainability for the natural rubber value chain. So a multi-stakeholder, membership-driven, business-driven initiative. Membership, and I don't know if you can see the slides. I don't see the slides from my side, but it would be great if I can have a confirmation that the slides are up. Anyways, membership is diverse and is open to everyone in the natural rubber industry. This includes, but is not limited to, smallholder farmers, including some Indonesian smallholder farmers, as well as commercial plantations, processors, traders, tire makers, downstream users, as well as civil society organizations and financial institutions. So after only 3 years from the inception in 2019, we have currently about 150 members in GPSNR that include companies with an aggregated market capitalization of about $700 billion US, and which already represent more than 50% of the world's natural rubber demand. Importantly, GPSNR members have agreed on a policy framework which requires GPSNR member companies to establish or update supply chain sustainability policies for the production and purchasing of natural rubber. And this policy should cover all aspects of sustainability, from economic to environmental and social. Specifically, GPSNR and its policy framework sets out 8 overarching themes that include commitments to legal compliance, community livelihoods, healthy and functioning ecosystems, so very relevant to the discussion we're having today, and respecting all human rights. Companies that become members of GPSNR must, within 6 months of joining the platform, publish policies that are aligned with the GPSNR policy framework. GPSNR is currently also working on approving implementation guidance for companies as part of our broader work to design what we call an assurance model, which is a system that will allow our members to demonstrate and make verified claims about their work on sustainable natural rubber. GPSNR members have also recently approved a set of reporting requirements, which members will need to fulfill on an annual basis to demonstrate progress towards achieving these commitments. So basically, what GPSNR does, in a nutshell, is to support companies to set strong supply chain goals, taking effective action, and tracking progress to create accountability and incentivize improvement and transparency. And if we can move to the next slide, you can see here some of our member companies. So all these companies that are GPSNR members will increasingly demonstrate their ability to fulfill ESG criteria. And GPSNR is set up to become an important tool to help advance financial institutions like most of yours and the clients of these financial institutions, especially in meeting their sustainability goals, and to develop suitable financing facility solutions for them. So if you are a financial institution, please do reach out to know more about our work and GPSNR work and how we can positively help your clients as well as your financial institutions' product development. Thank you very much, Clara, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stefano Savi. And right now, I would like to invite Mr. Surya Chandra as a Vice Minister, Agrarian Affairs and Special Planning Ministry to also provide his opinion. So, Pak Surya, you have 3 to 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Right away, sir.
Ya, makasih Bapak. Thank you very much for the speakers and all the guests. Since the beginning, I was just wondering myself, how we actually from the Ministry of Agrarian and Spatial Planning slash Land Authority Body or BPN have something to do with sustainable financing. So to what extent or what is the relationship between sustainable financing and our work? As you know, we consist of two bodies actually. One is special planning and the other is Badan Pertanahan Nasional or Land Registry Body, generally speaking. Those two were based on two different laws. Only in 2014, both were merged by President Jokowi, but before it was separated into different ministries. But the question is then, from our perspective, especially from the land administration and special planning, how can we support sustainable financing? That is my questions in the beginning when I sat here and listening to your presentation. About the land administration, in practice, there are no strict. Maybe I will give you more from the practical perspective, because I understand that you guys want to share something good, but I'm coming from the implementers. In practice, there are no strict restrictions in issuing land titles for environmental issues. That's the beginning of my statement. Say about certificate hak milik or land ownership, the only requirement is special planning. That is all. About the hak guna usaha or hak guna bangunan, the building and commercial land use, land title is usually derived from preceding permits or izin, which are given from various ministries, Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Pertanian, farming, etc., which required AMDAL or environmental and impact analysis, the AMDAL. So when they have the permit and the AMDAL as the basis of this land titlement, either HGU or HGB, it is assumed that they have met environmental assessment. So we don't have the authority to actually check whether you are environmentally correct or not. That's the first of my comments. The second, about the special planning, the scale used for special planning is relatively very small in comparison to what is necessary to prevent certain activities in an area for environmental purposes. And conservation areas are usually only categorized as open air zone or green zone, ruang terbuka hijau, or it is a forest area. That's it. So, my question to myself, especially Mbak Clara, so what is missing in our work in these two practices, two parts of my work in the ministry, is actually supporting sustainable financing. So that is the question. Maybe we can talk about the so-called hak tanggungan or encumbrance rights, if I'm not mistaken, benar ya Pak ya istilahnya bahasa Inggris. We might be able to require that it can only be issued by more attention on the environmental impact. We can do that, of course. For this, we need to coordinate with, first of all, the PPAT. I don't know the English term, the notary, the pejabat pembuat akta tanah. So they are the ones who make this akta jual beli. What is it, the English term ya? And apa Pak? Yes, shared and purchase agreement. The second thing probably, the encumbrance rights only issued only if they are met with the understanding or the perspective of HCV or HCS, the high conservational values and high carbon stocks. But to be honest, it really much depends on the PPAT and those parties who are involved. again, we don't really check that. We don't really ask, are you really, do you really concern about the environmental in the places that you are asking for the certificate? And the third comments might be, we have, of course, apart from the part of the Special Planning Director General, we have this Special Planning Monitoring and Enforcement Director General. So those two Director Generals in the ministry, one is making the plan or the special plans, the other is monitoring and enforcing it. I might think that, I would think that maybe this Director General of Monitoring and Enforcement of Special Planning could play a very important role, particularly when we review or when we investigate the encumbrance rights that we have been issuing, whether or not they are actually violating environmental considerations or whatever. The thing is that as for the bank, when we have this encumbrance rights, the bank normally give also the loans, hak tanggungan. They can provide loans for those people. But this is the third, the last one, the last comment for us to discuss further. The problem is that when we have these preceding permits, say from Ministry of Forestry, they have this AMDAL already. Then we are obliged to issue the certificate. We don't really check because the AMDAL is there, so we believe it. The problem is that you might get, for instance, 100,000 hectares of permit from the Ministry of Forestry through the forest release, they call it, pelepasan kawasan hutan. But in practice, they only ask for HGU 40,000. 60,000 is without HGU. Yet they plan until 10,000, 100,000 hectares. So the plans are for 100,000, but the HGU itself is only for 40%. So 60% is different. 60,000 are not covered by certificate. But the thing is, the banks can give the loan only based on the permit, not based on the HGU. So I think it is both sides. We are responsible in pay more attention on the environmental aspect of any land title that we are going to issue. But we also expect the bank should do the same. Help us to understand more, not just looking at the business. Well, this is they are going to have loans and they can pay interest, etc. So the economy is moving, but there are violations here. This is actually the one that President Jokowi is so concerned through the so-called permits evaluation reviews. It has happened the first time in West Papua, about 200,000 hectares of permit from the forest for the palm oil is annulled by the regions in West Papua, in Sorong. So the other case is that you might get the permit for 150,000, but in practice, you use much further, maybe 200,000. And this is environmental disaster. From the WWF might understand this, but it happens. So how can we actually support your sustainable financing? At the same time, we also ask for your support, for your, what do you call it, openness, When you give the loans, you also consider environmental at the same time. So then we can work together. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for such a practical point of view. And also the land title issue is one of the most practical things that you have brought in here in the discussions. All right, maybe because due to the limited time, maybe Mrs. Yati would like to give just a brief feedback due to the limited time.
Do you mean in response to?
Yes, if you
Yes.
if you
Okay.
would like to.
Just slight response. We can talk later on. Nowadays, you know that there is, we are developing the disclosure, financial disclosure. I mean, every companies should put on the disclosure on the way how they will reduce emission, added to their financial report. So that would be one of the way that between the BPN and also the bank can manage. So not only rely on AMDAL that you you don't evaluate the AMDAL, but internationally, in financial disclosure that we have become an obligation for the companies. In that disclosure that will be put into the financial report annually, then all will help from the BPN side to also together with the bank to increase the evaluation on reduction in emission. Nowadays, Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia is preparing the standard how to report that. So it will become national standard that based on also international standard that is in that will be issued by I forgot the name of the institution, but it will be in 2022. They will issue that standard that can be followed by Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia.
All right, so there will be a standardizations.
Yes,
That's it.
for the report.
All right. Yes, this is a very brief and limited time. Well, actually, this is a good discussions, and probably we will have soon better discussions about this, about the practical point of view and the sustainable financial instruments itself. Thank you very much, sir, for the opinions and the comments. And right now, I would like to invite Mrs. Felia Salim, the Senior Economist Board of Director and Green Fund, who was one of the pioneers in introducing the sustainable finance in the country. Ibu Felia, due to the limited time, I beg you to have 3 up to 5 minutes of your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Clara. Thank you to Bank Indonesia for putting together amazing speakers, very inspiring. A lot of insights, a lot of new insights, and what I hope to be a mainstreaming of the understanding of ESG, that hopefully economy and growth and climate is no longer a dichotomy, but it's integrated into a nature-based solution for economic resilience. I understand you've mentioned, Ibu Yati, about the physical risks and the transition risk, but I also like to add an additional risk, which is when you talk about land use, we talk about the food and land use, the agricultural forest, with regards to what's much discussed also in this G20 about the food security and food safety. I think that's an additional challenge to be financed. So, and obviously another risk, as the previous commentator was talking about, the regulatory impediments. These needs to be obviously put in the agenda. Yeah, we know that there's a lot of talk about the estimation of losses because of the climate change impact, drought, floods, etc., etc., and that 50% of world GDPs are really linked to biodiversity and nature, and Indonesia is in the position to be a leader because of our biodiversity and land use and ocean. So we could be playing a major role. And I'm happy to see that with Bank Indonesia and many of the first movers are already aligning with that. And we only have to see global banks, global rating agencies starting to consolidate standards and measurements. But this needs to take place. And because, okay, we need about 3.5 trillion every year for the next decade to finance this. So this is the good news. The good news is that it is, the risks are mapped, the financing gap is mapped. Swiss Re study has already mentioned anticipation of risk premium going up. So we know the problems, we have calculated, and we have a roadmap. At least today we have a global roadmap, and our homework is clear. Now, I understand from observation from the financial sector, the challenge is who goes first, right? What is required, obviously, is the willing partner. You know, I mean, wonderful presentation from the Indonesia Sustainable Finance Initiative, but really what we really like to hear more of, an integrated discussion with the willing partners, meaning from the real sector, from the manufacturing sector, from the palm oil sector, from the mining sector. These needs to be going in concert. I think it will be good to see a successful case study. Of course, this is not going to happen overnight, but basically, time is not on our side, and we realize that. So about the financing gap, okay, there's been so many COPs and several other G20s. Financing gap pledges has never come to fruition. So shifting gear to, okay, so it should be through the market mechanism to finance this. So with that in mind, how can we encourage countries like Indonesia, Brazil, to really take the lead? And we have a great opportunity here at the G20, right? How do we mainstream the ESG, in particular the S part, with regards to what I mentioned earlier, the food security and food safety, because it links to many hidden costs. There's health issues, there's food waste issues, and much more. So if we dig deeper, the financing is quite, perhaps it's bigger than we thought, but we need to figure out how much that is for Indonesia, and so that we can perhaps try to speed up the process. So I understand we have issued the carbon tax, and the carbon exchange to be is expected to support this financing gap. We know that the voluntary carbon market is really on the rise, but do you have a view from Bank Indonesia, who should run the carbon exchange? I believe there has not been a decision as to which institution to take charge of that. That's my comment for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the comments, Mrs. Velia. It's really fruitful and very insightful about the financing gap. All right, so we just heard about our discussions, and right now we are moving on to the Q&A session. And right now we have the questions comes from the Jakarta Post. How does Indonesia plan to leverage G20 to develop an international sustainable finance market infrastructure? Probably these questions would be addressed to Mrs. Yati. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. If I may, would you please put on the priorities agenda for sustainable G20 sustainable finance? If you okay. So one of the main priorities, as I mentioned before, is that G20 will develop a framework for transition finance that, among other things, involve the infrastructure. So we have the identification of transition finance activities such as taxonomy and metrics, how we measure, the transition disclosure recommendation, and ESG rating transparency. So this about green infrastructures will boost global green investment. So with the development of this infrastructure, the development of the framework, it's just decided this afternoon that this coverage, the main priorities, and what will be doing by the members countries. So by developing a framework for transition finance and also the improving the credibility of financial institution commitment, then Indonesia can make better plan how to move forward, including what Ibu Felicia mentioned. So actually the government has identified 5 major sectors that need to that have high emission that has to be reduced, including those from the agriculture and forestry. So that's by having the clear framework that decided internationally, we can adapt in stages. So we will have an orderly transition, not a sudden transition that maybe many people in Indonesia are afraid of the sudden changes that may result in economic turbulence because we still depend on a variety of exports, and so we have to prepare ourselves, making a good and orderly transition. That's one.
So we hope to see the long-term impact, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much for the answer, and thank you very much for the questions, Jakarta Post. And before we end this casual talk, Mrs. Yati will give token of appreciations for today's speaker to Mr. Solihin, to Mr. Alexander Rusli, and to Mr. Karyanto Wibawa. So, Mrs. Yati, the floor is yours. Here it is, the token of appreciations. Round of applause. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. And here we are at the end of the casual talk on building a resilient, sustainable finance. And thank you for the speakers for answering the question and also sharing the experience with the audience. We really appreciate it. And let's give a big applause to today's speakers. And to those YouTube audiences who are keen to get e-certificate of attendance, kindly fill out the link provided in the YouTube comments. I'm Clara Antawijaya signing off. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Based on a stable natural world will ultimately determine its future. Do we invest money in the practices that take us deeper into this crisis? or in the solutions that could get us out of it.